guys, welcome back to the build. We're back with the Mr. Mo appreciation build, and this, as you can see here, is my Pontiac Super Stocker 1970 GTO, which is part of the Mr. Mo build, but I'm here to make a little announcement that the build is changing just slightly. There is going to be another name added to this appreciation build. Someone we lost recently who was a vital member of the family. And I decided that not only are we going to show Mr. Mo some appreciation, now we're going to add this little guy right here. This is Buddy. He is the sweetest little guy that you will ever have met. And I decided that this is now going to be the Mr. Mo and Buddy appreciation build. Buddy recently crossed over the Rainbow Bridge. He lives about 16 years, I think. A very good life with his mom, Carmen, who just happens to be Mrs. Onyx Model's sister. And he was the happiest little pup in the world. He loved his mom a lot. He just crossed over the Rainbow Bridge. So now he's waiting for his mom, wagging his little tail right across that bridge. But for now, this is going to be the Mr. Mo and Buddy appreciation build. And just wait till you see what I have in store for the Pontiac Super Stocker that's going to really bring Buddy into this build. So, not going to tell you all exactly what I got planned just yet, but the colors are part of what's going on with this car. As Buddy's mom, Carmen, loved to dress him in grays and blues. And we're just going to say they were Buddy's favorite colors. So this is why the Pontiac Super Stocker is now going to be gray and blue in color. And when you see how I work this out, which I haven't figured out everything yet, but when I work this out, you guys hopefully will like what you see and will make Buddy proud. So why don't we just jump right into the build and take a look at what I'm doing? Yeah, let's do that. All right, ready to go? 3, 2, 1, we're in. Okay, guys, we're still working on the chassis of the Pontiac Super Stocker. We're up to step 15. Put that up here right now so you guys can see where I'm going to go next with this build. The installation of the firewall and the front roll bar, part of the roll cage, and the radiator also includes the gas pedal, and we've already installed the master cylinder onto the firewall. Now, the issue here is that this is completely warped. So we're going to see how we can make this work. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install the firewall onto the chassis. Now the firewall has a really good fit to the chassis, which is kind of odd with this kit considering that nothing else fits really well. And it seems to be cut perfectly to align with the chassis. Right there, it's got, it just seems a perfect fit. The issue is, as there is with every part of this kit, is that the firewall is also a bit warped. Let's see if I can give you guys a really good look at that. You see that? That's also warped. I don't think there's much on this kit that isn't warped, but that's okay because we can make this work. We're going to start gluing from one side. Hold it down, let it dry, and then work our way across to see if we can get this whole thing to glue itself down nice and even. Now, I didn't even notice that it was warped until I started putting it together here, because I have everything painted. Had I assembled it all previously and then painted it, well, then I would have noticed this quite a bit earlier. But since I didn't, and since I decided to go with this route with the current theme that I'm using for this build, I had to paint everything first and before I assembled it because there were going to be multiple colors here. So anyway, no more griping about this.
Wake up, you're in the middle of it. You want to run, go ahead. No one's stopping you. Stop complaining.
Let's get it done and let's see what we can do about making this fit correctly. Okay guys, and there we have it. It's fully attached to the chassis. So we dealt with that little bit of warpage quick and easy, unlike some of the other parts of this kit. Hopefully it'll stay where it's supposed to. Now we get to deal with this, which I know is not going to be easy. But this is the next step in the instructions, and that's going to go there. Now, they have mounting positions in the chassis. These small little holes here are the mounting positions for the roll bar in the chassis. Now, I wish they had been dug a little bit deeper, which might make it a little easier, but they're not, so we're just going to deal with it. And we're going to do the same thing we did before, which we're going to work our way slowly around the front of the car to make sure we get this right where we want it. Now we only have 3 mounting points here, here, and here. The glue down points, which will go here. They're going to go here, the little circle, here in front, and here right on this nub right here. So we've got to make that match there, and hopefully hold on strong enough that we can flex it and bend it to make the other side match where it's supposed to. So let's see if this doesn't turn into a disaster. Now the radiator is a ridiculous mounting position, as you've got to kind of sneak it in between the roll bar and the chassis. Don't let anybody talk you into this being a first kit for beginners. It most certainly is not. All right. So there we go. We have the front end completed. As far as step 15 goes, now we'll just have to hope that we don't knock it off while we're working on the rest of the kit. If it wasn't for all of the painting, if you're going to paint the chassis one color, then I recommend you just assemble all of this first before you go to paint. If you're not going to paint it all one color, well, then you're just going to have to work through it the same way that I did. Now, considering that everything is so warped in this chassis, I just hope everything else fits. But if you look at it, it is a very cool setup in the front here. It really does look good. That radiator is a really nice looking piece, so. But it looks like everything is pretty much set and ready to go in the front there. Except for a few other parts that we have to put on.
12 seconds later.
Okay, guys, this is what I had to do to hold everything steady. It just kept flexing so much that this was the only way that I was going to keep it steady while it dried.
Damn!
So I've got it all taped down. I applied some Tamiya thin cement, so hopefully sink in there and melt the plastic together, and see if it stays this time. So in the meantime, we'll be painting a few other bits and pieces as we continue the build. Okay guys, now this is the exhaust that's supposed to go... Let me see if I can show you guys. This exhaust is supposed to go through the frame and meet the engine, which is not glued in yet. Through the frame and meet the engine here in this crazy exhaust setup, which is going to be a real shame to cover up with the steel plate that's supposed to go over it. But as with everything else on this kit, look at how they go together. I mean, what the heck is that?
Oh my God, what is that? Oh my God, what is that?
You see that? The pins don't even fit into their receivers, and boy, this is gonna need some work. Okay guys, now trying to make this work, it's gonna be next to impossible. It literally, the pins do not fit so that you can close up. Look at that gap there. The exhaust pipe, they just don't fit. There's just no way. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut the pins off and see if we can't get a better fit here. Okay guys, now after a couple hours of work straightening this thing out, here is our so far completed exhaust. Used quite a bit of filler on this, and I just discovered a new filler, or new to me. Let me show you guys what I used. Mr. Hobby, Mr. Dissolve Putty. This stuff works really, really well. Does have a bit of shrinkage, so you have to give it a couple of coats. But it really gets into the part, and as you can see, if you remember what it looked like before, it's now one solid piece now, as opposed to those two warped mess of a pieces that they were before. A combination of the Tamiya putty and this Mr. Hobby Mr. Dissolved Putty. I wonder why everything is called Mr. with that company. And it looks like it's okay. So we're going to go throw some primer on it and see if it's ready for paint or if it's going to need a little more work. But for now, that is what it should have looked like in the first place. Okay, guys, we're moving along with the build now. As you saw, we have the front end finally together there, which hopefully it'll stay together this time. We got the interior done. Here you can have the seat, the steering wheel, the shifter, the fire extinguisher, which I just finished painting and putting in there. Pretty simple, self-explanatory that, so we don't have to go too much into that. And now we're going to finish off the front suspension. There are a couple things about this front suspension. And I'm going to put the instructions up right here so I can explain to you exactly what I'm talking about. If you look at part number 5, there is a right and a left side to part number 5. Now, they will fit on either side, right or left. So you're going to have to be very careful and very mindful of what direction which one you put on. Also, there is a small little bit on the lower portion of this linkage, which you're going to have to snip off and shorten a little bit in order to make it fit properly on the chassis and on these control arm. You're going to have to snip it right at the end there. As you're laying it in, you can just measure it out and see exactly how much you have to cut. I just had to snip a tiny little bit off the end of mine on each one, and it dropped right into the slot on the control arm that's notched in there. So pretty easy to get that right there. You're also going to have to open up the eyelet that goes onto the peg on the chassis itself, as they are a little small and they won't go over that peg, especially if you've painted them. So that's just something to look out for. Now, next thing we're going to do, we're going to install the shocks. And I want to show you a little something on the shocks. Let's get these instructions out of the way now. And we'll take a look at the car itself. You can see here that I've installed one already. And I've painted them in the red with my Coney Shocks label hand painted on there. I just think it's a good looking shock. That's why I usually always use the Coney Shocks. They're red and that's that cool little triangle label. So I kind of like replicating that. That's really the only reason I do it. You can see there's a linkage that I was talking about. And like I said, once you open up that eyelet, it pretty much just slots right in and then connects right to the arm. So it's pretty easy. You're not going to have too much trouble with that. Now, with the shock absorber, that I wanted to talk about. Because when you mount the shock absorber, its lower mounting point, which goes onto a peg on the control arm, and then it's got another peg on the top. If I can show you here on the one I haven't installed yet. Right there. Now that peg is supposed to slot into the upper part of the roll bar. You can see that right there. That's supposed to slot into there. Well, good luck putting that on the lower peg and trying to slot it into that roll bar without snapping it right off the chassis. And with all the trouble I've had with these particular part of the roll bar, I'm not doing that. So I'm going to show you what my solution was. And I'm going to show you right now. So we're going to install this one onto the car right now. And I'm going to show you exactly what I did. So we'll take this off of here. Now, first thing I do is I just insert it onto its mounting peg a little tight, which is what we want. Then I'm going to bring it up and I want to see exactly where it's going to hit the roll bar. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to snip just enough of that off so that we can pop it under the roll bar without forcing the roll bar, putting too much pressure on it. Because that's what we don't want to do. So I'm going to have to snip it down just a little bit more. So I always test fit this before I glue it down. And there we go. So that's inserted. It's actually inserted into the hole, and it still won't go in, even with just a little nub of it left. And this is the part where I was saying that you don't want to force that in there, because you're going to pop this right off, and then you'll have to fight it to get it back on again. But that's basically the whole installation of the shock. Now, I'm going to pull this off, and we're going to apply a little bit of CA glue here to mount the shock on. That way we'll make sure that the bottom mount is secure, and that won't make it very easy for just one small drop of CA glue. There is all you're going to need. And I'm just going to clean this up just a little bit. There we go. And then we're just going to install the shock, making sure that our label is going to show onto our peg. We're going to swing it up and insert it right into the roll bar. And there we go. Now, and there we go. Our front suspension is completely finished now. This is very detailed. It's a very cool setup. I mean, it really, really is. And when you paint it with all the colors, so that these things just stand out. You can see the rear shocks there, the front there. I just think it just looks so cool. Now, the shocks were painted with Model Masters red, and testers for the piston to the shock, and then there was testers metallic silver. The bottom of it was painted with Citadel colors. What color was that? Iron Hand Steel for the lower mount, just to give a little color difference from the silver up on top. And then a gloss coat of Tamiya Clear to the body of the shock. The Coney badge that I painted on there is done in flat white with Gundam red for the shock, the red stripe on it, and then just using a Gundam marker to simulate the lettering. But that's pretty much going to finish off the front suspension. So now the next step is to install the engine, which is the one part we've all been waiting for. This crazy engine with these crazy headers. Now the engine has basically one mounting point, which is right here in the oil pan, which attaches right to the cross member here. And a whole bunch of stuff just fell down. Hold on a second, guys. So, of course, with this model, you got to test fit everything first. So we're going to bring the engine in. Not a lot of room with that radiator in the place, so you definitely got to come in at an angle. And then we have the engine in the cross member. And the headers are coming through the firewall, which is this crazy design. But as you can see, there's nothing to hold the engine in, because that step comes way after. They want you to start setting up the roll cage and all that, but we're going to do that now, because step 16 shows the engine installation, and then you don't add all of the bracing and everything to hold the engine in place until step 18, which doesn't really make any sense to me, because your engine's going to be flopping around in here, as the only point holding it is in that front cross member. Now, to line it up straight, you're going to need your drive shaft, and you're going to need all your bracing here. So why they don't want you to do that first, I don't know. So we're going to go and get those parts and get everything ready, and then we'll be back to finish the engine installation. Alright guys, now these are all the parts we're going to need to install the engine. As this is the transmission, the drive shaft bracket or shield. This is the cross member with the transmission mount. And this is the drive shaft. Now the drive shaft is going to line the engine up with the rear drive shaft, and that's going to hold it straight. So what we're going to do is have to add a little bit of glue here to the engine mount, put that in, hold it as straight as we can, and then install the drive shaft, then the frame, and then the rear brace. So let's see if we can do that without totally misaligning everything. Okay guys, now that was a crazy ballet of movement, because you have to make sure you keep the engine straight, the drive shaft straight, then you have to mount the transmission mount in, then you have to mount this bracket in, and wow, that's just a lot of pieces you have to juggle all at the same time. But she's in. Just gonna give it a good while for it to cure, because we really don't want this coming loose. And then we're going to move on to the next part. But this is, I mean, you look at this just looks really, really cool. Get a little bit of super glue on there. Well, we're going to say that's under the car. You know, it's dirt, it's grime under the car. Yeah, we're going to call that. That's what we're going to call it. Might do a little bit of weathering under here, and that'll help to hide that. But it looks very, very cool. What do you guys think? Our next thing we have to do is we'll have to fight with that roll cage again, but that we're not doing until we're sure this is completely dry. So we're going to set it aside for now. And we're going to let everything dry, and we're going to end this episode right here then, because I'm not touching anything else until this is completely cured, because the battle I had up here to keep all of this straight was insane. But that is cool. I mean, just look at all the detail in there. I'm telling you, this is a really cool kit. Definitely not a kit for beginners, but a really, really cool kit. So I've got to give it to MPC. They make you work for it, but the result is worth it. I mean, just, I hate to cover all of that up. Look at that. That just looks so cool down there. And then this front, this whole front here, I mean, I would just like to leave it with no tires. I mean, no wheels, no tires on it, and just so you could admire all of the detail that's in here. And how cool all of that looks. And now, mind you, this is basically just a box stock build on this car. And it is very, very cool. So, let me just stop admiring this thing, because I just think it looks really cool. But, let me just put it down somewhere. I don't want to rest it on the chassis. I want to make sure we don't move the engine at all. All right, guys, so that's it. I'm going to end this one here. Just a quick video to show you just some of the really cool stuff on this car and on this chassis. So, we're going to come back on the next episode where we're going to be, I think we might take a break from this one just for a minute and jump on one of the other cars in this build. And then come back to this one because the roll cage is going to be a bear fighting those parts, putting those on. So, come back to the next episode. We might be back on this Super Stocker, or we might be on the GTO, or maybe the Fiero. One or the other. I don't know. So, and Iceman products, we're going to get set to install some of them soon. So don't forget to check him out because his stuff is really cool. All right, guys, that's it. I'm going to go, and I will see you on the next one.